Hi, welcome back to Investor Insights. I want to talk this time around about negative gearing. Personally, the whole concept offends me. It's just a souped up scheme devised by accountants or whoever's out there who thought of it to minimize people's tax. And minimizing tax, I suppose, it's a good thing, but the whole concept of negative gearing minimizes your tax by you incurring a loss that you write off your taxable income. So, to minimize your tax, you minimize your income. Bloody ridiculous. Let me give you an example. If you were to borrow $500,000 on a rental property, most of the time, in order to get the best write-offs, you would borrow the entire amount. So this property is worth $500,000. You're going to borrow the full $500,000. Now, this is before I take into account any of the duties and taxes that got to be incurred upon the acquisition of the property, any conveyancing fees. I'm just setting all that aside. That just makes the whole purchase even worse. But I'm just going to use this $500,000 straight out. Now, at current interest rates, let's say it's 7% a year, your interest bill on that property is $35,000. Now, if I used the average Sydney house rental yield of about 4.5%, that means that your $500,000 property is only going to give you about $22,500 a year. So what happens is you collect that $22,500 in rent, just this market rent, but you're going to pay $35,000 out in interest. So you've actually incurred a loss of $12,500. Now, your accountant takes that $12,500 loss and deducts it off your taxable income. So you got to pay less tax on $12,500. Claps all around. If you've been taking part in this, it's best to not keep on watching this, because I'm actually going to be telling you what the real losses have been. When you negatively gear a property, as I've mentioned before, it doesn't take into account the cost of acquiring the property. Now, stamp duty on a $500,000 property would be over $20,000. You've got solicitor's fees, conveyancing fees. Man, I'm not even taking them into account. But your tab is already worth your whole first year's rent. And that's never taken into account. You can't deduct stamp duty off your taxable income. Now, the other thing is, if you rented out a property and something goes wrong, for example, something breaks or something is not up to scratch, it's not up to code, you gotta pay to fix it. Yes, I understand that it is a tax deduction, but man, you still gotta cough it up, and you won't see it until your next tax assessment. And then what if the unthinkable was to happen? What if you can't find a tenant? Then you're up for the full $35,000 interest bill. And that's a pretty bitter one to swallow. That's the one that accountants never think about. Or they think about, but they don't want to tell you about it because it's going to scare the pants off you. No good comes out of negative gearing. If you're going to use leverage, use it in a positive manner. Do not borrow money, pay off interest, lose a little bit to write off tax. A better strategy is to positively gear an investment. Now, obviously, you're living in a housing bubble in Australia. Most people just don't realise it yet. Look at rental yields. Look at people's income. That's got to be telling you something about house prices. Secondly, when you put money down on a property as an investment and you needed that money in a hurry, you're not going to see it. Because despite what people tell you that house prices are slightly on the rise or whatever, real estate investments are pretty liquid. And getting rid of a house costs money. Again, conveyancing fees, so forth, so forth. A lot of people don't take that into account. Why don't people use leverage in a positive manner? I've mentioned this before. Why don't you look at nice, cheap, high quality stocks, they're far and few between, but they're there, with high paying dividend yields, borrow money at 7%, get a dividend payout of 10, 11%, yes, those stocks are still around, collect the 3%, pay the interest, deduct the interest, but pay the tax on the 3% that you've made. That's much better. You can't dodge taxes. You want to maximize your income. So next time you hear the term negative gearing, especially when your accountant mentions it, run. Close your ears and just run. It's a fallacy that people make money through negative gearing. They don't. The whole concept is there so that you lose money. So, until next time, if you have any questions, see you then.